fallout from President's fiery speech this morning. Joining us now with the answers, Fox News national security analyst Walid Phares and American Defense International Chairman Van Hipp. Let me start with you, Walid. Let's just go in order. China, President Trump began talking about China, the trade battle that we're engaged with in China, the mistake of allowing them in the World Trade Organization, or perhaps maybe the fact that the World Trade Organization was never able to deliver, or keep China in the proper lane. What do you make of it? I didn't hear anything new, but I did hear a resolve to a complete deal. Wall Street wants a piecemeal deal.
Look, this is the largest forum for international public opinion, and the president was very effective at, on the one hand, exposing China's activities for the last maybe 20 years in this regard. But at the same time, at the end, what did he do? He opened a path for dialogue with Chairman Xi, telling him, OK, you've done all these mistakes. Now is the time to fix them, and I am here in front of the international community inviting you to do so.
I think that was a common theme, in fact. I think he opened a path for reaching out to others, saying our enemies are not permanent enemies, suggesting that all these issues can be resolved. Van Hipp, you've always been one of my favorite connecting foreign policy with business. President Trump took a serious jab at globalism, which, by the way, has been rejected or is being in the midst of being rejected around the world, from Japan to India to Europe to the United States and to South America. So when China hears this, how do they put all of this together, and how does it impact the markets?
Well, the president also said, if you want democracy, protect your sovereignty. And while he was right when he said that when the president was talking about, if you want, we're the most powerful nation in the world, but we don't want to use that power. That sent a message. And he also said that so many of our former adversaries are now our friends. We work with them. But I got to tell you, I think this was a powerful speech. It showed American leadership. He put China on notice. And I think it was a brutally honest message that needed to be heard. And, Charles, it was reminiscent to me of speeches I heard in the past of President Reagan and President Kennedy, talking about religious liberty, calling for the world to stand up against the terroristic regime of Iran. Very reminiscent, I think, of Reagan and of Kennedy, and it was a message, I think, that the world needed to hear.
Walid, President Trump on Iran said it's coming along well, that America is in a position, is really in a strong position when it comes to Iran. I guess suggesting that while we have put off military actions against these increasingly provocative actions by Iran, doesn't mean that we can't. There's people who are holding out hope that still, even if it's impromptu and short, that maybe President Trump and Rouhani can meet, that somewhere at the UN. Do you think that would be a good idea?
The meeting by itself is really depending on what is the American plan and what is the Iranian counterplan. The president was very clear that a very large international coalition should isolate the Iran regime, especially after their attack on Saudi. It was not just an attack on Saudi, it was on international economy, meaning the oil installations. But what is important is that the president seemed to be calm. Oh, yeah, we are creating our system in the region, we are defending the region, but we will decide the timing of any action. He's open to meet with anybody, but at the same time, on the ground, he's not ready to make strategic concessions.
Real quick, Walid, and I want to get back to Van Hipp. The fact that European countries now are saying, yes, it was Iran who committed that attack on the Saudi oil fields, how important is that?
Very important, and we discussed it last week, you and I. On the one hand, Europeans are going to continue to be committed to the Iran nuclear deal because their business is involved in this. But on the other hand, they're not happy with the Iranian regime attacking another country, oil installations in front of the world. So the president gained the Europeans at least on the issue of the missiles and on the issue of militias. And the Europeans now are on the defensive with Iran.
Van Hipp, real quick, Boris Johnson's committed to the October 31st Brexit, hard Brexit, soft Brexit, however you want to term it, despite a setback at his own country's Supreme Court. How would that impact the markets, do you think?
Well, I think I like what President Trump said when they met at the beginning. And he thinks that he's going to get a deal with the United States where trade between the UK and the United States, the president said, is going to quadruple. So it's a great relationship there, and the president talked about it in his speech at the UN. But I think the big story is this, Charles. Boris Johnson is emerging as that mediator, if you will, between President Trump and the European Union. Right after Boris Johnson came out and said what he said about Iran and said we need a new deal and we need a Trump deal.
Right.
Just minutes after that, the E3, the UK, France, and Germany, they came out, blamed Iran for the attack in Saudi Arabia, and also said, Iran, you need to start negotiating a better deal. So I think Boris Johnson is going to play a big role going back and forth between President Trump and the EU, and that's a good thing.
Van and Wally, you are two of the best. We were lucky to have you to help us hash this all out. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Well, this